Hey guys, it's me, Yaya Diamond. What's up, peoples? How you doing? It is a great day, and I'm so very excited to be here. I have an author on the show today, and we were talking and chatting, and I got my questions. I got questions because she has an amazing book out, and it's on Amazon. I'm going to go ahead and share that with you. It's called 30 Years Hence by Denise Beck Clark. And I want to welcome Miss Denise Beck Clark to the show today. Thank you so much for joining us. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you for being on the show today. I'm so very excited to have you. So, I wanted to say, it says 30 years, right? 30 years. So, what inspired you is I mean, this is a true story. What inspired you to write this book?
Okay, well, the 30 years in the title refers to 30 years beyond World War II and the Holocaust.
Mm,
I was very inspired by learning about and reading about survivors of the Holocaust.
mhm.
One day it just kind of hit me that I was born like not long after the end of World War II and the Holocaust, which of course was one of the most horrific instances of genocide that we've ever had
Yeah.
in the world. And I started reading all these accounts by survivors, and as a psychotherapist and a social worker, I was very interested in what made some people able to survive what basically amounted to torture
Mm,
and murder. Um, and I just really studied it a lot, and I wanted to write about it. And somehow I wound up writing this novel. And it was also based on a woman that I had met in that time, the early 70s. Her name, like the character in the book, was named Ida, and she was, at that time, she was probably in her like around 40ish, and
mhm.
she was a survivor of the Holocaust. And she was a very interesting person, even though I didn't know her well. But I thought about her for a long time because there was just something about her that intrigued me. And so the character Ida in the book is based on a real person named Ida who was a survivor of the Holocaust.
Wow. Wow. I mean, so you said you met her back in the 70s, you said?
Yeah,
Wow. Wow, that is
yeah.
amazing. Yeah, it's amazing.
A lot of the Holocaust survivors didn't want to talk about it for many
Yeah.
years. And it was only maybe like in the last 15 to 20 years that suddenly all these memoirs started to appear.
Yeah.
And, people who I guess they had been really young when they were in it, and when they got older, and the ones who lived, a lot of them wrote books about it.
Yeah.
And I mean, they're amazing to read. The detail in
Yeah.
them is just really
Wow.
amazing.
Well, you have two New York City women that are subjects in your story, right? One
Right.
was suffering from a midlife crisis as a Holocaust survivor, and the other young woman was despairing and without direction, having barely survived this turbulent 60s, hippiedom. How are these women linked to each other, though?
Well, basically through the job that the younger one has. Um, she goes to a store, which is next. The job she had was in a bookstore on West 57th Street in Manhattan.
Hmm.
And right next door to it was a, sort of chic, expensive store named Henry Bendel. And she went in there one day on her lunch hour, and she saw this older woman um, stuffing some clothes into her shopping bag, so she looked at her, and there was something about her that, made her feel kind of sad.
Hmm.
And she didn't report her or anything. She just sort of walked away. And then later in the day, this very same woman who was shoplifting appeared in the office in the bookstore that she worked in, and it turned out that the older woman knew the younger woman's boss.
Ooh.
So that's how they met initially, and they became friends in the book. And that was the connection. And they shared, some psychological stuff that was going on in their own way. Each of them was coping with depression and anxiety and not knowing like where to go or what to do next.
Mm, mm,
So
wow.
that
Wow.
was the connection.
Wow. Your book
Yeah.
takes place a year after I was born in 1973. um,
Oh, well.
yeah. So, what about this era that fascinates this fascinates people? What is it?
Well, it came to be known as the Me Decade. And, whereas the 60s was more like, we're all together in this and everybody was with everybody. The Me decade, the 70s, was more focused on the individual, and people were going inward and finding more about themselves and working on themselves. And it was just there was a lot there was that going on, but at the same time there was a lot of hedonism and clubs
Yes.
and drugs and dancing and
What about today? What?
yeah, it's really different. um
Wow.
Yeah, and and then there were these, like I get into in the book, these various, in addition to self help books, there were programs like EST, where people would go for a whole weekend and they had all these different exercises, not physical exercises, but like verbal and mental exercises that they would do to find out about themselves and their histories and where they were going and how they could function better in their lives.
Wow.
So
Wow. That is wow. So with this whole 1970s me decade and everything, how did these two women like indulge themselves in in this whole meat era, this hedonism you called it? And like
say that again. I didn't hear you.
the
No,
hedonism.
hedonism.
Yeah, hedonism and but did they expect to feel like consequences for their actions?
Well, in the book, um, no, they weren't thinking about consequences. And like Ida, the older one, wound up going off with this drug dealer one night, and she was married and she had a husband who was at their home in Queens. And she was sort of bored and depressed. And, she was having a midlife crisis in addition to having her memories of the Holocaust. I
Hmm.
mean, it was only like 30 years before. So 30 years may sound like a lot to some people, but to older people, 30
Yeah.
years is like not that much,
Yesterday. Yesterday.
right?
It was
Exactly.
yesterday. I was 20 yesterday.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
So, yeah, so she, sort of threw caution to the wind, so to speak, and she wound up spending a night with this drug dealer, and they did drugs and they had sex, and like all sorts of things happened as a result of that. And the younger one also was going through her own identity crisis, even though she was in her early 20s. She, had a troubled background, and, she had had all these friends in college, and now she was just really on her own in Manhattan, by herself, basically, except for a boyfriend. And she and Ida wound up becoming friends. And they both went through their own individual stuff, but they relied on each other, in addition to a bunch of other characters who became sort of mutually involved with both of them.
Hmm. Wow. Wow. That is, you're really going deep into this. You're really getting deep into this. It's like you lived these characters' lives. I mean, okay, so you worked as a psychotherapist for 3 years, right? You're retired now, right?
Yes.
Okay, so how do you feel about like a second career in writing? Because I mean, you really got this whole thing. Like you're in. Like I believe you. I believe you. What do you say to that?
Well, it's really not a second career because I mean, I've been writing all along, you
Oh.
know. Yeah, sure. I mean, this is a major issue for writers
Hmm.
is, you have to earn money
Yeah.
too, and only a small percentage of writers, like any kind of artist, earns their living by doing their art.
Tell me about
And,
it.
so I became a therapist and a social worker in order to have an income. And I figured out, I mean, I didn't figure it out overnight, but it took years of learning how to incorporate everything into one day. Sometimes I'd get up at 4 o'clock in the morning just so I would have an hour or two of writing before I had to get dressed and go to work.
Wow.
So yeah, I was writing and
Mm.
working at it all along.
Wow.
Um,
So
yeah.
you've written poetry and nonfiction books about murder, love, and redemption. Okay. Which was more
Yes.
fun and challenging?
Well, I find writing fiction is the most difficult, really, is because you're making things up, basically. And I mean, some people that comes easy to, and
Mhm.
others of us it doesn't.
Yeah.
But I really love the idea of having ideas and working it into a plot and making up characters who can, carry out the plot and carry out the ideas. So fiction is really fascinating. But on the other hand, writing nonfiction is also great because there you're really, you can also deal with ideas, but you're writing stuff that has happened or, about things that, whether it's you or other people or incidents, you're writing truths, supposedly. So,
Supposedly.
yeah,
Supposedly. So,
right,
wow.
right.
Wow. So, okay. So, what were the greatest challenges that you had there and your rewards about writing your debut novel?
Yeah, it's my debut novel in
Yes,
terms
it
of
is.
being published, but I had written another novel prior
What?
to this. Yeah, I just didn't publish it.
Why?
Um,
You gonna publish?
I didn't, it wasn't good enough,
Oh,
I
okay. I
didn't
got
think,
you.
you know.
I got you. So you
And
decided.
at that time, no, this was back in, the early 2000s, and self-publishing was really just coming into
Yeah.
its own at that time.
Yeah.
And in fact, I also self-published in 2013. I self-published a little poetry book, um, but I plan to do a few more of those because I have written many more poems since then. um, but you have to be willing to put your stuff out there. And it was one thing with traditional publishing when you had to rely on a publisher to
Right.
accept your work to be published. But now and today, anyone can publish anything basically.
Anything.
Yeah.
Anything.
So, mhm.
Anything.
Yeah,
Oh my God.
really.
Wow. So, okay, 30 years of psychological works, right? And being in psychology. Okay, so being that you know about this, being that you were in psychology, what kind of a healing is needed in this story? And also like did this kind of, your experience in psychology, did it come handy when you were writing this story?
Oh, absolutely. Sure. I mean, both of the women who are the main characters have psychological issues going on, meaning problems, depression, not knowing what direction to go in. Ida is having a midlife crisis. Michelle is having an identity crisis in her early 20s. So, yeah, having psychological insight into people certainly helped, as well as with the program that I made up, that happens in the book that people go through in order to overcome some of their psychological issues.
Right. And so that program is going to be the aversion therapy. Don't you think that that's a bit like extreme?
Yes, absolutely. Because basically, what it is that I used like a version, not a version, but a version of the Holocaust to be the program. So people go into it and they're like subjected in a mild way to some of the things that people were actually subjected to who were in concentration camps and in some of the ghettos that existed in Europe at that time. Um, so yeah, it's the it's very extreme. I mean, a lot of people, not a lot, but people that I spoke to who had read the book, I think some people were put off by it. Um, I guess they felt that even using the idea of a Holocaust in such a way, it was like sacrilege or something.
Eh,
Um,
I don't
but,
think so.
well, good.
No,
Thanks.
I think that there's a lesson to be learned in everything, and the lessons need to be brought out. So sacrilege is not really like not speaking about it, leaving it alone and not bringing it back up, and not letting it reflect, and so it won't repeat itself again. That to me is
Exactly.
sacrilege, and I think that what you're doing is an amazing thing.
Thank you. And what interested me so much about everything that I was reading, like I said earlier, was really how some people manage to get through it and survive and be okay. Like
Mhm.
there was one psychiatrist named Dr. Frankel who wrote a book, Viktor Frankl, his name was, and he wrote a book and founded a kind of therapy called logotherapy, which preceded what we today call cognitive therapy. And he survived the Holocaust. He was in the concentration camp. And he brought out in his writings about how you think, how your attitude, you can be stripped of everything, but if how you're thinking about stuff remains your own, no matter what else is taken from you, you
Right.
still have your thinking and your attitude.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. So, why do you think that the perseverance of depression and anxiety in our society has increased since you first started writing 30 years hence in 2015?
Oh, wow. Well, I think it started actually before I started writing it. I think it started on the increase after 9/11 in 2001. I think that was a major trauma for society, for the country, and the people of the United States as a whole, but also for individuals. I think a basic sense of safety and trust in our, democracy and our being apart from Europe and the other continents, really, that was broken. When 9/11 happened and we were attacked and people died. Um, and then after that, things just really got compounded. I mean, with certain political happenings, and then with the pandemic. I think the pandemic had a major effect on people's lives and people's emotional states. I don't think that we've all recovered from any of those things, you know.
There was COVID that really traumatized us. I mean, it was like one thing after the other.
Hmm.
And it's something that was unprecedented that never even ever happened before. COVID in our lifetime, at least, where we
Right.
were all isolated for that such a long period of time. Um,
Hmm.
it's just crazy, and I think anxiety really picked up there too. One of your book's characters is a white supremacist. And then
Hmm.
two are the Holocaust survivors. Um, why do you think the perseverance of anti-Semitism and racism is on the rise today?
Well, you know what? I'm not sure it's on the rise so much as it's just coming out in the open more. I think that racism and anti Semitism have always been there. I mean, we know it, they both have.
Yeah.
Um, they've both been around forever.
Mhm.
And now, for whatever reasons, they're just coming out more, with certain people being running for office and being elected in the first place. I mean, that just shows when you elect people who have those views, that's what it says about the people who elect them, is
Mm,
that they have those views too.
yeah.
So, a
Hmm.
lot of, I think that there have been so many traumas to people that,
Hmm.
it's like the people of the country are sort of falling apart en masse.
Yeah.
Uh, my husband is black,
Hmm.
and my son, of course, is mixed.
Hmm.
Um, but he also has Down syndrome. So, I don't
Oh,
think
he
he's
must be
aware.
so cool to hang out with.
He's adorable, but he's not aware of a lot of stuff.
And that's good.
Yeah, in a way, yeah,
That's really
he's so innocent. I mean, I just like, if anyone ever asked me, like, what's one word to describe him, that would be the word I would choose, is innocent. Um, but yeah, so I have both cultural things going on in my life too. And, I mean, both groups have been persecuted like forever. Um, and it's just mind boggling
Isn't it?
to, it really is. I
It makes
mean,
no sense. I don't understand it. I till this day I don't get it. I don't get it. And
well,
maybe I'm naive, but I don't get how you don't like someone because of where they come from or
but
the color of their skin.
you know what? This
I don't get
discussion just reminded me of an essay that I wrote about a year ago, and I just sort of forgot about it, and I really need to get back to it. It's about scapegoating, and people need scapegoats. They need to have someone or something that they can point to that and say they're bad, because that makes them feel better. They can feel superior. Um, and something like having physical features of color or whatever um, is right there. So, in a way, it's, being dark or having certain features, you can't hide that. I mean, I guess a lot of Jews have tried to get away with not being Jewish, or because it's not something that you just look at someone and go, oh, yeah, you're Jewish.
being black
Um,
is not something you can get away with.
my husband, I got him a t shirt once that said, God made me black because he knew I could handle it.
Mm.
And he used to wear that, and he put a patch on his motorcycle jacket that says that. And, we talk about that sometimes. It's
Yeah.
really,
I have two
yeah,
more questions for you today. Is one
okay.
of your messages that as bad as life can be, it can always be worse?
Yes, yes. And the flip side of that is gratitude. Count your blessings. See the glass as half full and not half empty, or see it as completely full. Um, a lot of us tend to focus on what we don't have and what's missing in our lives rather than focusing on what we do have and what we're grateful for. And that's a big message in the book.
Yeah.
And that people who kind of go through the program, they come out the other end realizing, hey, life is good and I've got it good.
Hmm.
So yeah, that's part of what I think people take from it.
Awesome. And what do you hope readers will feel after reading your book?
Well, I hope they'll feel like they just read a good book that they like. And also, they might feel inspired to move ahead with dreams of their own and, make their own lives better and stop dwelling on what they feel is lacking, and focusing more on what's good about their lives and
Yeah,
feeling inspired to really persist in following their dreams.
that's amazing. Well, I want to thank you so much for being on the show. It's been such a pleasure having you, and all the answers and everything is just it's a blessing. Thank you so very much. I'm gonna put
Thank
that
you.
information. No problem. I'm gonna put that information 30 years hence by Denise Beck Clark in the description box below. But if you don't see it down there and you're watching somewhere else where there is no description, here it is right here on your screen. You can check it out for yourself. I always tell everybody to read the sample. It's going to give you a little bit more in depth of what it is that you're looking at. But most of all, just go ahead and and enjoy reading. I love reading. Reading is amazing, and
Yeah,
it's so wonderful to read about history and to read about the things that may or may not have happened in the past so that we don't repeat them. I want to thank you again,
exactly.
Denise. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you guys so much for tuning in. Don't forget to dare to be different. And until next time, guys, bye.
Don't forget to follow us on YouTube and Instagram. Thank you for watching.